JJ McCarthy is cooking to start off camp. Can he keep it up? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. Thank you so much for those of you who have been hashtag everydayers all throughout the summer, all throughout the offseason, listening to the Everyman series and all that. Appreciate you all so much. If you are new here, hello and welcome. I appreciate you as well. You can find the show wherever you find your favorite podcast. Just search out Locked On Vikings wherever you listen to your favorite shows, including SiriusXM. We're also on YouTube and Amazon Fire and Roku if you just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today on the show is jam-packed. I want to talk to you about how JJ McCarthy has been doing at camp. A lot of positivity, which is very exciting. Positivity around Dallas Turner as well. We also had another injury thing with Shaq Griffin. Seems a little minor. We'll get into it. And there's also been a couple of roster transactions with Mekhi Blackmon going on IR with his ACL injury and the replacements and some other shuffling and stuff, which gives us a new guy to cover on the Everyman series. So we will do that as well. A lot to get to. So let's dive right in. JJ McCarthy is, I think, the story of day two at training camp. Had a lot of plays that really impressed the beat. Everybody wrote about it. A zip over the middle, a big long bomb to Jalen Naylor that everybody was really excited about and stuff, and ultimately looked comfortable. Now, here's the interesting thing, and here's how I'm going to cover JJ McCarthy when it comes to training camp, when it comes to his development and all that stuff. It is all about development with him. The real story right now, the day-to-day thing, is how he is progressing, right? And what I think you're going to get a lot of the time is, and like I'll get this mailbag question every week, when's he going to start, right? This is the time of year when like a million fantasy shows and other radio shows and national shows are like trying to get, call up, hey, we need a Vikings guy and stuff. And they all ask me the same question. Who's going to start week one, right? Because they haven't been paying attention to the Vikings at all. And they don't know that it's already essentially been announced that it's Sam Darnold. So I tell them that. And then I tell them, hey, he's there when he's ready. And when that's going to be, that's the big question, right? So arguing about when's it going to be, how long should we be, when should we start to worry, all that stuff. And all of these are different ways to guess. They're different ways where we don't know where JJ McCarthy is. We don't know what is reasonable. Is he only trying to change a couple of things and maybe week 2 is reasonable and by week 3 we should be worried? Or is that week 8 we should be worried? But if it's week 6 we shouldn't be worried. We don't really have that timeline. And I think if I were try to give you a timeline, I would be guessing. And unless somebody's putting a stake in their reputation on it and reporting, hey, the Vikings want him in by this time, which the Vikings have publicly very ardently refused to give a timeline with good reason. So unless somebody's going to report that there is a timeline, they're guessing too. All right, they're not going to give you anything. So here's what you get here. We're going to cover the progress. We are going to look at, we looked in great detail at how JJ McCarthy threw the ball at Michigan. We had several episodes about that in the offseason, which are all still live. You can go listen to them if you want. You can go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL and listen to a couple of different McCarthy things. And then OTAs, when we saw how he was throwing in OTAs, what work he had done over the offseason, how he had changed things, what we're looking for. And what's nice about camp is you at least get one rep where he's throwing the ball and you get to see his follow through and you get to see the full body right at the right angle. And if you know me and how I do scouting for the draft and stuff, when it comes to this kind of stuff, when it comes to covering progress, it is inevitable that there will be misses, that there will be bad throws, that there will be learning moments, right? You're learning a new thing. There's going to be bumps in that road. And so I don't care where the ball goes. And I think that is such a big level up that you can have if you're trying to get smarter about football. If you're not trying to get smarter about football and you just want to argue about if that was too much of an overthrow or whatever, go have fun. This kind of coverage might not be for you, but I like to think that this is for somebody who wants a little something more than what you would get with, Skip Bayless types yelling at each other on TV, right? And to me, what that is forgetting about trying to chart misses and completions and trying to make something out of camp stats, which everybody knows don't matter. But instead, looking at the process. How is his leg coming through? Is it coming through the way we want it, right? How is he stepping? How is he lining his feet up? All things that were concerns coming out of Michigan. And things that the Vikings very clearly want to fix because it's very clear that he's working on those things. That's what you're going to get with me. We're going to talk about the progress. We're not going to try to suss out a timeline. We're not going to yell about, well, he missed that one, but he made the other one. But we're going to talk about mechanics. And with JJ McCarthy, I could only see him in one rep in this one, in this supposedly very good day. And it was the rep to Jalen Naylor that a lot of people are like, oh my God, look how underthrown it was because he had to kind of hold up for it a little bit and it turned into a contested catch. For whatever it's worth, I don't think that's that bad. It's fine. You want to miss long, on those deep balls, you want to miss long more than you want to miss short, which would be the note. But what I saw is that his legs still swinging out pretty far, baseball style, which leads to over-rotation in your hips, which leads to losing you in control. So on those deep balls, that habit has not been built yet, and that's reverting to an old habit. Building that muscle memory takes time, so we got work to do. We're not there yet. Good day, but it doesn't tell me he's ready to start day one, which I don't think was your expectation anyways, and I think that for me, that's a way to check if I'm on the right track is okay, is this method of looking more at mechanics and less at the placement of the ball, is it leading me to somewhere insane? Well, no, not really. It's leading me to JJ McCarthy is not ready yet, which we already knew. Okay, cool. It's a little bit of a smell test, all right? I'm on the right track. So that's what you're going to get with JJ McCarthy on Locked On Vikings. And every time I notice something different, I'm going to bring it to you, and I want to really be in detail this whole camp process about that in particular. Camp is a zero-sum game. Somebody always has to lose a rep if you're going to win a rep. If JJ McCarthy isn't the story of the first day of camp, it's Sam Darnold, who hit a bomb to Jordan Addison, who's also been slinging it all over the place. And for all of those big plays, somebody in the secondary is going to look bad. You can't have a big, good offensive play without somebody in the secondary looking bad, which always makes it for a very fun Rorschach test. Pay attention to who is only looking at, oh, wow, look at that corner got beat versus, people who only tell you, look, that QB did good, right? Now with McCarthy on the threes, I don't think you care about how well, the random corners Jalen Williams did on this particular coverage and stuff. But on the ones, right? Oh my God, Andrew Booth got beat or whatever. But if Sam Darnold does well and he hits a big post over the middle to Jordan Addison, a lot of people's first instinct is to go, okay, who sucks then? Who got beat? And I want to caution you on that because camp is a marathon, not a sprint, right? Now, if somebody's getting smoked over and over and over by everybody, okay, we got a problem, right? If he's getting smoked by the twos and stuff, okay, we got a problem. But you're looking for long-term patterns, not specific data points, right? So it's a game that requires a little bit of patience and a little bit of willingness to gather data and look at a long-term picture. But as camp is such a zero-sum game, we want longer patterns, or if you know how to, I'll say, read the language of a given position, if you know what footwork to look for and what hips are supposed to do and all that stuff, which is kind of the mission of the last 2 years for me has been to learn all of that, very much a work in progress. But for whatever I know about it, that will inform you more than trying, that will give you the answer to the question, was this a good offensive rep or a bad defensive rep? And you can't tell that off the highlights of the clips that are posted on Twitter or whatever. But if you do end up going to camp, that's the goal here. And if you're curious about a lot of different positions, I am sure you can search that position on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed or YouTube page and find an episode about it. I've gone over a lot of this stuff. Basically, anytime I learn something, I'm putting it on this show. So if you want it, it is there. My Patreon goes into patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL goes into a lot more detail as well. But that's, I guess, my goal is to be a little bit smarter about it and to let the lowest common denominator all fight over 4 different shows. And Locked On Vikings everydayers, we can rise above and be a little smarter. And I think that's a good thing to strive for, whether or not we succeed. Hope you agree. So we'll keep that going. Right now, I'm still seeing that over rotation on deep balls. Okay, we'll keep an eye on it. And next up, we'll talk about what happened with Shaq Griffin and a couple of like depth chart notes, as well as the Everyman series. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. It's the best place to find parts for your car, whether it is something cosmetic like an LED headlight or something that your car really needs to get you from point A to point B. It's part of your style. It's part of your lifestyle. Your car is an extension of everything that you are. From big trucks to zippy styling cars, whatever it is that you drive, you need to take care of it. So for your number one ride or die, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts, and you'll always find exactly what you are looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. So with the parts you need at the prices you want, you can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. When you're done here, if you want to expand things to the national world and you don't want to get bogged down in talking heads yelling at each other over what this does for LeBron's legacy, head on over to Locked On Sports today. They have a 24/7 stream on their YouTube channel with Locked On shows just like this one, giving you the local perspective on all the big stories. People that actually know things about their teams, like the fact that Sam Darnold's is slated to start week 1 in a way that a lot of the broader national shows won't give you. So go on over to Locked On Sports today and enjoy that. Next up here, Shaq Griffin goes down with a twisted ankle. We've got the second cornerback injury in as many days. Very frustrating, this one. For whatever it's worth, seemed a little more minor, at least the way the beat reported it. He goes down with a twisted ankle. He gets up. They pull him for the day. He walks around all for the rest of practice and then walks off under his own power, along with trainers, but with no help from them at the end of practice. So he stayed out there for practice. And with camp injuries, the serious ones, you get taken to the locker room right away. But Mekhi Blackmon, locker room right away. He limped his way to the locker room. He didn't get carted off, which is actually fairly common of ACL injuries. You can walk on it, you can put weight on it, but you can't run, you can't cut, you can't, of course, you do all that stuff. And then the surgery itself is a longer recovery. So while it is not as devastating to your mobility as, say, a cramp is, where you literally can't get up, and a cramp looks more painful at first than an ACL injury. Obviously, the ACL injury requires surgery, recovery, big long process. Something to keep in mind, like how bad the injury looks kind of has an inverse correlation to how bad the injury is. Because if you can feel the pain, that's a good sign in a certain case. But anyways, Shaq Griffin, ankle something. And the fact that they didn't feel they had to look at it right away, to me, is a sign of optimism. And hopefully that's not too bad. Pads are coming on soon as well. O'Connell did say that Andrew Van Ginkel is expected to come back by pads, or that was kind of the timeline he gave for that, which, again, rare to get a timeline out of an NFL team for an injury, so I'm inclined to believe it. I don't think that they would say that out loud if they weren't pretty sure that that would at least be close. Obviously, setbacks can happen and stuff, but whatever. That's all kind of always like an omnipresent risk. So hopefully we can get that back. But in the meantime, Dallas Turner has been taking first team reps. That's the other big thing. And again, very, very exciting to everybody. That was what we asked Ron Johnson on the Minnesota Football Party, who has really jumped out to you. He said Dallas Turner. You had the Christian Darrisaw comments about him in OTAs. You've had other random little press scrums where people have kind of said, "Oh yeah, the kid looks good." I'm really excited to see with my own two eyes when I get to see it for the first time, which will probably be the live stream of the night practice because I won't be there in person this year, or at least a preseason game. exactly what is making people so excited about Dallas Turner. But of course, you got to wait till the pads come on as well. Especially with the O-line, D-line one-on-ones. Without pads, it is such a different game. If anything, it favors quick rushers against power rushers, which I keep calling him Dallas Turner, not Danielle Hunter. There's something very Freudian going on there. I apologize for it. But Dallas Turner is using quickness a lot without the pads. Now, if I recall, when I did him in the draft, I didn't see him as like a primarily finesse kind of run around you, not through you guy. I actually remember noticing a very powerful edge rusher. So I certainly am not concerned or worried about if like he's all a lie until the pads come on. But you can just never know that well for sure. So we have to kind of temper this. But people are excited. People on the team are excited about him. They're excited about McCarthy. They're excited about Dallas Turner. If that holds, that is by far the most important win Kwesi has had since becoming GM. Even though, the way I talked about the Darrisaw contract when it signed, that's maybe the most blowout of a win Kwesi has had as GM. That contract is insane. I'm honestly, the more I learn about it, the more I'm astonished that Darrisaw said yes to it. Also, we have the details about that, so I should talk about that soon. But it will be completely eclipsed if JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner are both good, and you got both those guys in the same year. That changes the next decade of the Vikings for the better. Like that we can celebrate a lot. And things like missing on Lewis Seen, things like being a little bit neglectful about the cornerback situation, which was already bad when you inherited it and it's only gotten worse, is all totally small potatoes if the quarterback works out. So tempered excitement. Let's not go too crazy yet. But boy, that would be huge. Okay, Christian Darrisaw's contract. My goodness, why did he say yes to this? So his cap hits, which is the number you care about, he's making 6.4, or he costs against the cap, 6.4 million this year, 10.4 million next year. So that's not really serious starter money. That is, not insignificant money, but it's obviously pretty cheap compared to the $28.3 million average per year price tag on the extension. That's because the extension won't kick in until 2026, which is the key fact here that makes this deal team friendly. Right now, Over the Cap projects his 2026 cap hit, which will be $23 million and a little bit of change, projects that will be 8.1% of the cap. We don't know exactly how much the cap will be, but by Over the Cap's guesses, 8.1%. That is very sensible. That's kind of like the Orlando Brown Jr. contract that the Chiefs signed, or a Cam Robinson contract. That's what you see for like second tier tackles. Now, in terms of APY as the percent of cap at signing, which is the metric I usually use to do this, it's a much more up there with the major. It's up with the Andrew Thomas deal that was signed last year. The Laramie Tunsil deal from last year is a little bit higher than that at 11.1. The Colton Miller deal from a few years ago. Recent premier left tackle signings, and it's kind of right in line with that. But because it doesn't kick in for 2 years, and this is sort of the magic of this bridge structure that he loves so much, that cap hit is going to feel really small by the time we get to it. And what the kicker is here is because Darrisaw signed early, it's 10.2% of the cap the year of signing. But this deal, if he signed it next year, which would have been a normal time to sign the same deal, to be 10.2% would have been a lot more. Somebody in the YouTube comments yesterday suggested that maybe because Darrisaw has had a couple of injuries, he was maybe a little more willing to take an early deal, just get the money locked up, don't risk any more injury. And I mean, I can't refute that. Like, that's a decent enough hypothesis. The injuries he's had so far, though, have been fairly minor. It's been a concussion, it's been an ankle thing. Like, it's been fairly minor. The most serious injury I think he's had in his career was the one he had that required surgery between college and the NFL that made him miss his whole pre-draft process, miss a whole bunch of his first rookie camp, which can derail a rookie's career entirely. Thankfully, that didn't happen for Christian Darrisaw the same way it did for, say, Lewis Cine. But he has dealt with a few health problems, and he knows what it's like to miss time. So maybe that experience did, even though it wasn't the most serious thing in the entire world, maybe that experience did have something to do with it. It's as valid a suggestion as any. But for whatever reason, the Vikings haven't. So the Vikings now have, like, I need this to set in. Christian Darrisaw is now a Viking through 2029 at a value. Like, just that is just there now for the rest of the decade. Everyone, I guess, is good with that. We speculated a little bit on the football party about potentially a Danielle Hunter-ish situation where, like, a year comes by where he's so underpaid that he becomes unhappy with it, and now we got to deal with that, which I don't think is impossible, but also is the most solvable problem ever. Just pay him what he is, a little more, and then it's fine. Like, you can still probably have a good deal on him. You just can't have a completely unrealistically good deal on him. And, you know, you can move on from there. So all very good news there with Darrisaw. Speaking of roster stuff, there were some roster moves to replace Blackman and some other stuff going on. And that gives us an entry into the Everyman series. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. There are millions of people on LinkedIn, and over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not going on LinkedIn, you're missing out on a gigantic chunk of the talent pool. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn and meet those tight deadlines that I'm sure you feel are unreasonable without the help of LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Some roster transactions now on the second day of training camp, with Mekhi Blackman going on IR with his ACL injury, which we discussed yesterday. The Vikings add Jacobe Francis, who will be the subject of today's Everyman series. He is a practice squatter from the Texans, most recently, Memphis grad. But they also made another switch. They waived KJ Cloyd and signed Jabril Cox, who has been around in the league for a while. He was an LSU guy when he came out. He only spent the one season at LSU. He was an NDSU guy before that. And he went to, I think the Cowboys is where he started. I'm going to do his Everyman series a little bit later. I think that one actually may warrant a full episode, so get excited for that. But for now, we'll focus on the Everyman series for Jacobe Francis. He is you'd call him an Atlanta kid. He wasn't born in Atlanta, but he moved there pretty young. So he's an Atlanta kid. And at a young age, his parents split, which is something many of us can relate to. I'm part of that group too. And one of the experiences of that is not really understanding fully what your parents are going through until you're a lot older and you see maybe your friend go through it, or you see somebody else you know go through it from an adult perspective, and you realize what they were going through while still putting on a good face for you. And you gain into a certain appreciation. That's something that he talks about. But he, as a kid, he played baseball and football. And football he played because he loved. Baseball he played because he was good at it. It came really naturally to him. But football was the one that was addictive, where he'd come on the field and his whole psyche would change. And that's the one he stuck with. He went to a pretty important high school. I think it's Newport High School is what it was called, in the Georgia, in the Atlanta area. And that it's a very quality football program there. And it's a school where you kind of pick a sport and commit to it, and you don't really do cross sports. So he kind of had to let baseball go, become a full-on football kid, which was not an issue for him. He signed with the Memphis Tigers, and he remembers going to like the first practice or like the orientations and stuff, kind of meeting who his eventual competition would be and his teammates, and looking around and saying, okay, it looks like I belong. There's this thing that happens to your brain when you're the superstar, right? Which basically every Everyman series that we've gone through, every one of these people has this ability or has this moment, unless you're one of those guys like Samus Reyes or something that didn't pick it up till later, or somebody that was super unsung in high school but like found your way through JUCO or whatever. But for the most part, these kids are in high school and then they're 4 and 3 and 5-star recruits, and they're absolutely dusting people in high school. They're the superstar. They're the guy. And that gets to your ego a little bit, especially when you're 16 years old and you're a superstar. How would you not get a little bit of a big head on your shoulders, right? It's completely intoxicating. And it's also like, you understand why these kids get so hopelessly addicted to football that it becomes their one true goal, drive, and passion throughout the entirety of their early adult life. When Francis signed with Memphis, though, he showed up humble and hungry. He understood, I'm not going to play right away. I'm a freshman. I got to earn my keep. Like he showed up humble and hungry and understood that. He had this moment where he was kind of like falling into complacency a little bit, maybe is a way to put it. In his freshman year, kind of understanding, I'm not going to be called on to play. I can kind of sit and learn and whatever. So he wasn't like, say, for example, preparing for games like he was going to have to play. And then after practice and the kind of the meeting or the like huddle after practice, the coaches talk to everybody. One of the coaches looks at him and says, "Hey, Jacobe, you never know when your name will be called. So everybody's got to prepare as though they're going to start because you never know what's going to happen." And that sticks with him. That really sinks in. That weekend, he studies film of the upcoming opponent. He really looks at like what is like he really preps as though he is going to be a starter. And lo and behold, the starter gets a concussion that weekend. He has to go in. And he's as ready as he's ever been to play a game. It's like something very prescient about that comment from a coach. Like it's like almost like he knew. Jacobe Francis would continue to play throughout that freshman year, spot duty, but he would get in. And then sophomore year, it was a struggle because the whole staff changed out at Memphis that year. And there's this feeling out process that goes on, right? When you're recruited by a staff, that staff has really chosen to spend a lot of time with you to get to know you before you ever take the football field. So there's already a rapport and there's already this like expression of mutual like desire, right? We want you here. And I am like, it's the position coach, right? Like the guy who is coaching you went to your house and met your mom because he wanted you to go to his team. And that dynamic of a relationship is a great foundation off of which to build a relationship between coach and player. When a new staff comes in, well, I didn't pick any of you guys. So now you have to prove yourself to me. And that is a way different relationship. So there's a feeling out process. Not to mention players looking at coaches going, I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if you're going to be good. I don't know if you're going to tell me a whole bunch of the wrong stuff, make me look bad and ruin my career. We don't know each other yet. We got to feel each other out a little bit. And it's inconsistent. Jacobe Francis will go in and out. He'll have good days. He'll have bad days. He'll be inconsistent. He'll lose his kind of grasp on playtime. And this really affects him negatively. This he takes personally. He really, it's the negative thoughts and the dealing with negative thoughts. They will creep in, especially for a cornerback where any shaken confidence, it's like a gymnast getting the twisties. Like it is an absolute non-starter. So the confidence gets shaken and then that spirals even worse. And then it's fending off this creeping thought of you're just a failure and trying to stay positive and productive and, looking up and forward is really, really hard. And it's a lesson he has to learn his sophomore year. He will ultimately focus, but if you ask him now, he says yeah, I kind of came in cocky. I came in cocky. I was cocky in high school. I was cocky at the end of freshman year once I was getting play as a freshman. He came in cocky, got taken down a peg a little bit. He got a little humbled by that kind of sophomore year slump. But by senior year, he had changed numbers. He's wearing number 1 now, which as a corner is the most dangerous thing you can possibly do. And he's playing again, and he's playing well enough. He's one of the key members of the Tigers, and he gets drafted to the Texans. But in the pros, he gets humbled all over again. With the Texans, he doesn't make the team. He's like bouncing on and off the practice squad, and that's where he's been for the last couple of years, bouncing on and off the practice squad, playing 8 special teams snaps a game, not being the premier guy. And now the Texans have let him go entirely. He was completely out of football since October. He got released in the middle of October last year. Didn't get a sign with anybody, didn't get a call from anybody, but he finally got that call from the Vikings. So this is a little bit of a career resurrected for an undrafted free agent that was otherwise kind of, you're in and out of the practice squad for 2 years and you go, which happens to a lot of undrafted free agents. So this is a rare sort of second chance for Jacobe Francis. That only shows up because someone else got hurt. Like I said, it is a zero-sum game. The worst thing that can happen to you, the most unlucky thing that happens to Mekhi Blackman, turns into the luckiest possible thing that happens for Jacobe Francis. Another chance, and that's all you can ever ask for, even if it's a long shot. We'll talk to you next week about what continues to happen in training camp, and as always, Skol.